Prepare thine-selves, ladies and gentlemen, forthwith we are about to embarketh on another journey of the variety. One Piece is going on another 3-week break. Okay, I don't know what I was trying to do with that, trying to sound fancy. Okay, so after chapter 1111, which will be coming out this week, 1111, which is of course going to be a Zoro chapter. I want cover to cover Zoro. All Zoro, every single panel. He doesn't even have to be doing anything relevant. It could just be a random panel where Zoro is eating a salad, but I want to see some Zoro. Also some Jinbei, because Jinbei's bounty is also 1,100,000,000, so he has an 11 in there too. Zoro and maybe a little bit of Jinbei, but that's all I want in the next chapter. And then after that, we're going to go on a 3-week break. Oda released this nice little message. There was so basically he says like, hey, I'm going to take some just time off here. I'm sure everyone's heard about the death of Toriyama sensei. And there's a line here that I think was misinterpreted, or it made it seem like Oda's health is in decline, or there might be something wrong with Oda's health, like something like, well, Toriyama passed away and then I'm also not feeling good, so I'm going to take some time off. That wasn't the way it was supposed to be interpreted. I even saw some news sources running with that. Basically what Oda said was, because Toriyama sensei passed away, I don't want anyone to think that I am also sick. I don't want anyone to worry about me. I'm just taking some time off, all right? Which is becoming more and more frequent. I would be okay if like multiple times a year Oda did this. Like last year and the year before that, it was in the summer around there where Oda took about a month off. But if he does that more than once a year, I'd be okay with it, because that's more time for him to rest and recuperate and to spend time with his family. So definitely. He also throws a thing in there about like, oh, I guess I should also probably figure out what the One Piece is. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to take some time off, everybody. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Just some self-maintenance and everything. And I should probably also figure out what the One Piece is. I should probably sit down and probably jot that out. Which Oda's just playing around, right? I don't know, maybe Oda's like, oh yeah, I figured out what the One Piece was years ago. Yeah, I mean, he said so before in interviews and things like that, but wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't it be funny if it was here at like the final saga, Oda was like, I'm not even saying that to be like funny. Like, honestly, from a storytelling perspective, like it's like playing D&D a little bit. It's like you don't really know what the story's going to turn into when you start it. Oda originally thought this was going to last like 5 years, and then like the warlords showed up, and then the supernovas showed up. I'm pretty sure Oda did not plan the supernovas at the beginning of the story. That was something that came like a lot later, like right before Sabaody kind of thing, right? So, because editors have their input and everything, and there's like a vibe of this, I don't know, I'm not a mangaka, but the idea is maybe what One Piece is right now isn't exactly what he saw way back in 1996 and 7 when he was initially drawing it, the first two, like pilot chapters of Romance Dawn. So, if Oda was like, hey, maybe he had one idea what the One Piece was at the beginning of the story, and maybe that has changed over the years, right? In fact, I hesitate to bring this up because I have no idea where this was mentioned. I don't even know if it was mentioned. So take this with a massive heap of salt. But I seem to recall there was one interview that Oda did at some point. I cannot cite anything here. This is just going off my memory. That basically the question was, hey, if somebody correctly guesses what the One Piece is, would you change what it is? And Oda said yes to that. Once again, I have no idea. I shouldn't even have brought that up because I have no idea if he even said that, all right? That was just my memory, and I could have read it from a comment that couldn't, cite their sources. So I have no idea. But I always like to think that Oda had multiple ideas for what the treasure actually was. Like if you're writing this for something like 20 plus years, it's gotta pop into your head every now and then, like, should this be what the One Piece is? Could it be something else? Or could I add to it, Like, I don't know. I just feel like writing a story for 20 years, I was like, nope, this is what it is, not changing it whatsoever. It has to be this and nothing else. I feel like at a certain point, you'd be like, well, maybe I could change it a little bit. Maybe I could add this to it or subtract this or maybe make it a different way. I don't know. But yeah, whatever the One Piece turns out to be, As long as it turns out to be, as long as Buggy finds the treasure first, I'm fine, as I'm sure a lot of people will be. And at the bottom of this, Oda, over here, at the bottom of this, Oda just says, oh, by the way, there's also a lot of characters on Egghead right now, and he has little doodles of Dory and Broggy, and then Saul and Clover and Lucci and Robin, and then the Gorosei, and then Sentomaru. He drew a doodle of Sentomaru. I love that. Sentomaru out of all of the characters. Also, Kizaru and Kuma are there. So Oda basically says, hey, maybe you should go and read up on the backstories of all these characters. It's always very adorable to me that Oda seems very, like whenever there's, like, back at Reverie was a big one. When all those characters showed back up at Reverie, like Dalton and Wapple and Kureha, Oda had to put those little, like, hey, remember Dalton? Remember Wapple? Remember Drum Island, right? It's almost like sometimes Oda's, like, overly concerned with, like, hey, guys, I know these characters haven't shown up in, like, 20 years, so I hope it's not too much of a trouble to go back and reread or know about what's happening with them. You know, it's always kind of, like, interesting for me because we love this story. We love this manga. This entire shelf back here is nothing but One Piece. Everybody loves it. Like, of course we remember Vivi. Of course we remember Dalton. Of course we remember Wapple. Of course, even begrudgingly, I remember Foxy, okay? But yeah, so Oda's always very concerned about his fans. Like, I hope it's not too much of a trouble to remember all these characters. I know there's a lot of pieces in this story. I'm sorry, guys. I'm like, no, you're good. You're good. You've made a story for the last, a quarter of a century pretty much, with all of these moving parts, with all of these interesting characters and the world building. It's amazing, Oda. Keep doing what you're doing. Hope you get a good rest, good vacation, spend time with your family and your kids and everything like that. Okay. What am I talking about today? That was supposed to be a brief intro. Oh, Barry, you know how it goes. We might as well just make the rest of the video a tangent. Who cares? What are we... All right, Zoro and Mihawk. All right, we're talking about Zoro, Mihawk, and the whole Lucci thing. That was the day's topic. Okay, so, yeah, last chapter, we had Zoro finish off Lucci in grand style, takes out his 3 swords, uses a new technique, Leopard Hunter, which is like an upgraded form of, like, the Tiger Hunt ability that he had, or Tiger Trap that he had. That was actually the technique he used to defeat the Nyamban brothers back at Syrup Village, right? So he has, like, an upgraded version of that I think he uses after the time skip, and then he has this version, which is specifically, like, the Lucci killing technique. It's just like, this is a technique I use specifically to kill Rob Lucci of Cypher Pole Zero. Let's go! And then cuts him down, and then we see the end of that, all right? And, the reason why Zoro did that, the thing that really pushed him over the edge, was, of course, Sanji's shit-talking. That was pretty much that, where Jinbei was approaching the battle, and Jinbei was communicating with Sanji over the comms, and it was just like, yeah, what is that moss head doing? He's such a freaking drag down, he's such a bother, and so that gets Zoro to be like, excuse me. We see his, like, ear, like, flex, and just like, what is that now? And then, because Zoro's not wearing the comms anymore, I guess he took them off at some point, because he, like, overheard Sanji talking to Jinbei, and then Zoro just grabs the Enma. Lucci knocked the Enma out of his arm at some point, so he's spinning up in the air. He grabs the Enma, he puts the Watto in his mouth, and he just dices down Lucci, okay? So a couple of things with this. I was saying in the chapter review that he only had the 2 swords, right? Because the Watto was on his back at the end of the last chapter. We saw it there when he was like, when he got the Enma knocked out of his hand, Watto was on his back. He was holding the Sandai, and the Enma got knocked out of his hand, okay? So then Sanji shows up, he says the thing, he grabs the sword, pulls out the Watto, and finishes off Lucci. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, he was only using 2 swords up until now. And I completely forgot that, no, at one point earlier on when the fight was beginning, he was using 3. And you could go back and you could check this out. And a lot of people pointed that out to me. Like, actually, no, Tekking, he was using 3 swords at one point. So that makes me think even more of the idea of, like, Zoro was messing around with this guy. He really was. Because think about it, right? He starts the battle with 3 swords. And at some point, for some reason, he decides, you know what? 3 swords, you're not worth it. He takes out the Watto, sheaths it on his back, and then just keeps fighting with Nitoryu, okay? Now, maybe you could argue because Zoro has some really high-octane Nitoryu style techniques. My favorite being Rashomon. We need more Rashomon in this story, damn it, okay? Well, anyway, yeah, so maybe he's like, I'm gonna use Rashomon on Lucci, and it's kind of weird we didn't see something like that on screen. It was a cutaway. But then again, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, right? So maybe Zoro's like, okay, I'm gonna sheath the Wado, I'm gonna use Rashomon or Climbing Tower or some other techniques he has, each gorilla, knee gorilla, something with like two-sword styles. Maybe, I don't know. Right? But even so, after using like a two-sword style technique, he's not using three after that. He's like, I'm just going to stay with two for a while. I could defeat you with two, right? And a lot of people have arrived at the conclusion that he just picked this stuff up from Mihawk. Because if you look at Mihawk and the way he fights, he likes to play with his food, as it were, right? And of course, you have Mihawk's famous line, which was at Baratier, and then also again in the live action, they use it there. He's like, I don't hunt rabbits with a cannon. It's basically like that. Now, I don't want to say that Zoro is like perfectly trying to emulate Mihawk. Like he's going to start dressing like Mihawk and wearing the hat or anything like that, right? Or he's going to switch out his three swords for like a giant berserk like Dragon Slayer Buster Sword or something like that. Oh, can we see Zoro swing a Buster Sword one time though in One Piece? I know he uses three swords, he uses katanas, but we've seen Zoro pick up other swords before when he has to. Like at Arlong Park when he only had the Wado there, he asked Johnny and Yosaku to throw him the swords, and those were like scimitars. So that was actually a really cool scene. I actually really love that scene where Zoro's there and he's just like, Johnny, Yosaku, throw me your swords, and without missing a beat, they're just like, yeah! And they just throw the swords like, boom! Finishes off Hachi. That was really cool. That was a cool scene, right? But anyway, I don't want to see Zoro pick up a giant, Zangetsu, what's the name of Cloud's sword in Final Fantasy VII? Does it have a name? I don't remember, but probably in some extra lore somewhere, somehow, there's a name of that thing. But whatever. Giant Buster Sword, Zoro swings it, it'd be cool. He used a scythe at Wano, that was cool when he used the scythe. He used Usopp as a sword once. Does Usopp as a sword count as a Buster Sword? Yeah, kind of. The Nose Buster. Okay, anyway. Zoro's not going to be exactly like Mihawk, but I can understand him picking up some habits from Mihawk. Just because of the virtue of the idea that Mihawk is the greatest swordsman in the world, and Zoro wants to be the greatest swordsman in the world, so he's going to best Mihawk, and he trained with him for 2 years. He's going to pick up some stuff from him, okay? In fact, the first time we see Zoro post-time skip, at the Return to Sabaody arc, what does he do? What happens? He slices a giant galleon in half, which was how Mihawk was introduced into the story when he showed up at the Baratier and sliced up the Dreadnought Saber, which was Krieg's flagship, okay? So that was really cool, and we've seen parallels between him and Mihawk since then, and he trained together for 2 years, so that makes sense. Or rather, Mihawk trained him, right? So the idea that Zoro's going up against Lucci here, he's looking at Rob Lucci, all right? And Luffy kind of cleaned his clock earlier on in the arc. Luffy went into Gear 50, he was pulling out the goggles, and he was rocketing into Lucci. And that was when Lucci was in his awakened form and everything, and that was a serious... Lucci really had a nice portion of humble pie at the end of that fight, okay? So maybe Zoro at the end of all that was like, all right, we're a Yonko crew. Our captain, Luffy, is a straight-up emperor now, and he was able to take down Lucci in Gear 5th with, no problem whatsoever. Zoro understands his position. He is the first mate. He is the vice captain, as it were. He is the Yonko commander, directly below Luffy, okay? He understands that position. He is the king to Kaido. He is the Katakuri to Big Mom. He is the Ben Beckman to Shanks, that's his status. So I could definitely see Zoro going up against Lucci kind of first of all, you are not even worthy to fight our captain. Right? You fought him earlier, he kicked your ass, you're not even worthy of fighting him anymore, right? You're gonna fight me. But even in that case, Zoro is sort of you're not getting my full power. Alright, and I understand, it's manga, it's anime, a lot of people, why don't you just, me included, I said this, why doesn't he just finish him off with Ashura? Why didn't he just go 9-sword style, dead man's game, and just finish off Lucci in one attack? And he's like, well, Tekking, have you ever known an anime fight to go like that? It's okay, yeah, you got me, that's a good point. It's is that how fights work? No. Okay, well, all right. back up for a moment there. I will say this. True, most fights don't immediately start and end like that, although some do. There are examples. But this was not a showcased fight. Not really. I mean, we cut back from this fight after a while. This fight went on for months, okay? A lot of chapters went by without us even getting updates on what was happening up there. That kind of became a meme, in the community for a while. Like, are they still fighting up there? Are we going to cut back to see Zoro, like, eating leopard meat? Like, what is going on up there, okay? And then we cut back, and it's like, no, they're still fighting. No, Jinbei hasn't gotten there yet. Oh, now Jinbei's finally reaching them. Now the fight is finally concluded. And it's like, okay, well, it wasn't a really showcased fight. We didn't see a lot of it. So in that situation, Zoro finishing the fight as quickly as possible, I think would be fine. It was like an off-screen thing. Now, like Luffy finishing off Kizaru in like really quickly, like one big attack, that would be something like, okay, that kind of like, decreases the tension as it were. But with the Zoro Lucci thing, it wasn't really focused on all that much. It really comes down to the idea, I guess, that we just needed to get Zoro distracted for a while so that other stuff's going on. And so it's like, okay, Luffy's fighting against Kizaru, and then Saturn shows up, and then Zoro has no idea, by the way. Zoro's feeling some crazy Conqueror's hockey spewing off downstairs, but other than that, he doesn't know that one of the Gorosei is there. He doesn't know he's turning into a giant spider demon that can blow people's heads up by just a glance and spit poison, and he doesn't know even more of the Gorosei are showing up. Like, they can feel the hockey, but they don't actually know what's going on down there, okay? So it really seems like Zoro just needed something to like preoccupy him for the time. So it's just like, oh, it's Luffy down there, and then Sanji, and then Vegapunk got killed, and okay, and now the Giants are showing up, so then Dory and Broggy are there. Meanwhile, what's Zoro doing? Oh, he's still fighting Lucci. It's like, all right, yeah. But in terms of like, could he have finished off the fight quicker? Absolutely. Like, that's not even like a debate at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it isn't. I feel like most people have accepted this because if all it took was a little jab from Sanji to get Zoro to be like, okay, you know what? I'll show you who's dead weight. Santoryu, shoo, see? I could have finished him like that. It was that easy the whole time, right? So there's a little bit of a bad habit here that he maybe picked up from Mihawk and then added to the idea that, like, I, as a Yonko commander, as the next in line after Monkey D. Luffy, I can't show full power against Lucci. Luffy was able to beat Lucci no problem, so I can't show a struggle against him. And, Zoro has a little bit of a pride thing going on there and all that stuff. Maybe if Zoro did open up with, like, all right, here we go, 3 swords, bandana, Ashura, dead man's game, like, that was something he used against Kaido, and that is the only person he has used that technique against so far. He didn't even bust that out against King, all right? So it's the idea that, like, hey, this is, like, my strongest technique. Let's talk about that for a moment. Like, tell me in the comments down below. That move he used against Kaido, the dead man's game, is, for right now, that's Zoro's objectively strongest technique. Because I kind of feel like it is. Because if you look at the context of when he used it against Kaido, he tanked that, combo attack from both of the Emperors, from Big Mom and Kaido. And then after everything was said and done, he's basically like to Law and Luffy and everybody. He's like, hey, this is going to be my final attack. This is it. I'm going to go 110% and just give him everything I have and just see what happens. And then he does. And then Kaido's like, oh, that scar I will carry with me for the rest of my days. It was truly a good attack. And then Zoro's like, oh, damn it, that didn't even take him down. That didn't even knock him flat. Like, damn it. So I believe that is Zoro's strongest move. Now, the idea is, like, if this was a video game, if you were sitting here playing a video game, it's like, charge up your overdrive meter. Here we go. Theurgy. Boom! Zoro just uses the strongest attack at the beginning of the fight. I'm okay with doing that. But Zoro might not be. Zoro's like, look, I used that technique. That was my strongest technique, and I used it against Kaido of the Beasts, one of the former emperors of the sea. He was deserving of that technique. He was deserving of my strongest shot that I could possibly give. Lucci does not meet that level. Lucci, I'm not going to bust out, dead man's game against Kaido, and then also Rob Lucci. It's like, Zoro's like, I'm not doing it. I could, but I'm not, because he's not worthy enough. I can finish him off with just 3 swords. Actually, I could finish him off with just 2. Maybe 1. No, I could finish him off with 1, but we'll do 2, Maybe Maybe something like that going on in Zoro's head or something like that. Like Mihawk's kind of speaking to him. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lesson that Mihawk taught Zoro personally one day. Like we saw the lesson where he was learning about how to add hockey to his swords and everything like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if Mihawk literally pulled him aside one day and was just like, Zoro, you do not use your strongest technique on a mere ant. You know, he's like, remember, Zoro, remember what I told you when we met at the Bratier all those months ago. You do not hunt rabbits with cannons. Meanwhile, like, a rabbit hops out of the forest and Perona just... She is not a swordsman. She can do whatever she wants. But you do not hunt rabbits with a cannon. You know? What if that was a thing where maybe, like, some of the stronger human drills were, like, coming after... Maybe that was, like, a handicap thing after a while. So, like, Zoro fought against the human drills with Santoryu, and he was, like, getting a good handle of it. Maybe there was a lesson where after Zoro had gotten a little stronger, he's like, okay, I'm going to give you a knife. You don't fight with your katanas. You don't fight with your swords. I'm going to give you a knife. Now you go out there and fight against the human drill king or whatever. Like, that was an anime-only thing. That giant human drill that had a huge sword like Mihawk's, that was anime-only. But I'm assuming that one was probably, like, the king. Like, that could have existed on the island, sure. And then Zoro fights him and beats him with Santoryu. And then he's like, okay, now after a year of training, it's like, here's a freaking butter knife. Now go fight him. All right, because you are so much better than him now. You don't go full power. So that might be a thing. That might be a thing. Oh my god, do I open the bag of worms on this one? Do I open the can of worms, Pandora's box, and mention Zoro's eye? Well, I already did, so I guess I'll do it. Okay. Are you ready for this one? I'm sure you've never heard this before, right? You've never heard of it. I'm sure. Okay. Zoro gets really, really, really serious when he opens his eye. Yeah. No one has met that criteria yet. You know, Pika didn't. Monet certainly didn't. Not even Kaido. Zoro's fighting against Kaido. And he's like, maybe now I open my eye. And it is like, Mihawk is like, no, Zoro, you only open the eye when you fight me. And Zoro's like, all right, Mihawk, okay, senpai, I won't open my eye until I fight you one-on-one. So even Kaido's not worth it. Boom, you know, and Lucci's certainly not worth it. Boom. That is when Zoro goes 200%, ladies and gentlemen, when he opens the eye. The eye thing is always so funny to me because, like, right after the time skip, that is all anybody talked about. Like, I made videos about it, maybe not way back then because this was like 2010, 2011 when the time skip happened, but when I started making YouTube videos about One Piece, one of my first ones was, like, Zoro's eye, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, everyone's talking about it for years, and like, okay, is he going to open the eye? You know, what's going to happen? Is he going to have the Sharingan? Is he going to have the Rinnegan? Is he going to have the whatever Gon? You know, whatever, is he, whatever, okay, here we go, the Sake Gon, you know, he activates the true power of sake or whatever. And everyone's always talking about it. He's like, he's going to have a Hawkeye just like Mihawk does. And it's just like, okay. And then after a while, everyone just kind of stopped. You know, by the time Wano rolled around, no one was really bringing it up anymore. And just like, okay, I guess he just lost an eye. It's like, yeah, he probably just lost an eye. Yeah, that's how it goes, though. Although it would be, okay, it would still be badass for him to open the eye. Like, it would be cool. Like, even if he's missing an eye, that would be so cool to see, right? Like, Zoro's clashing with Shiryu, or he's clashing with another really strong swordsman like Ethan or something like that. And then they bring it up and just like, hey, what's up with your eye? And just be like, oh, you want to see? And then he, like, opens the eye and it's just an empty socket. You know what I mean? Or it's his eye's all mangled in there. Maybe, like, a tear of blood rides down. It's like that would be a cool visual, even if it's nothing, like, there's not a special power with it or anything, that the eye is literally gone or severely wounded or damaged. But just from the demon perspective, Zoro opening his eye and, like, his old mangled eye here with a giant gash in it, like, that would be badass to see. So I kind of do want to see him open the eye just for that reason. But yeah, that's Zoro's eye. Clearly he only opens it when he wants to unleash his true power, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. All right, well, anyway, is that a video? Yeah, that feels like a video. Okay, that's a video, I guess. All right, there you go. Now, I do, as I also said, I want this to be addressed with Sanji and Zoro. Like they bring this up. And this was something that I feel like there was an opportunity to do this after Sanji had come back from Whole Cake Island. Zoro and Sanji could have had a discussion with that, with Sanji leaving and going and everything like that, and then leaving the crew and like kicking Luffy. Like, I feel like that should have been addressed. Although Zoro, of course, wasn't there. Maybe they just never told him about it, like that fight that Sanji and Luffy had at Whole Cake. Maybe just no one brought it up to Zoro. I feel like there's a lot of personal discussions and conflict that could arise with the Straw Hats every once in a while. Like, not to say that they're going to hate each other. Sanji and Zoro don't hate each other. Like, that's not the case. They have a rivalry, right? They shit-talk each other, but they still care about one another. And that's the point. If they care about one another, when one of them's doing something like this, like Sanji I think is perfectly within the right here if he was going to be like, Zoro, what were you doing with Lucci? And like, well, I'm not going to go 100% to fight Lucci. Luffy killed him so quick. I mean, Luffy beat him so quickly. I'm not going to. Like, listen, you don't understand. Old man Vegapunk is dead, and the Gorosei were showing up down there, and we could have really used your help, or like they could have used your help up there, like Nami and everybody, and you were playing around with your food fighting Lucci when you could have just finished it off and then helped us. And Zoro was like, you don't tell me what to do, screw off, swirly eyebrow, and just like, no, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. We're fighting these world-ending threats downstairs, and you're up here being like, yeah, I'm going to use 2 swords, maybe to fight you. Oh, okay, now I'll use 3. It's like, no, that's bullshit. All right? Like, no. Next time this happens, just, if you can win, please just win, all right? Like, we can move on. We're going to fight stronger opponents as we go, certainly. So it'd be cool if they had a discussion like that, Sanji and Zoro. I doubt it's going to be actually focused on, or it might just be played for laughs in the background, but we'll see. Anyway, I have a couple of live stream ideas for the 3-week break, so we'll be talking about a lot of stuff. And yeah, just sit tight, and we'll be back with One Piece in about a month after this chapter comes out. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching, signing out. Later.